It's time to have the What's to Read with McNally Robinson Booksellers. So the first Friday of every month, Chris Hall from McNally's comes in, and we feature 5 books from their upcoming newsletter. So, welcome back.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, nice to have you here.
Thank you. I can't believe it's March.
I can't believe it either. And you're looking good. You're in one piece.
I am in one piece, I believe.
Well, congratulations, first of all. You guys have officially opened at the Forks. How did all that go?
Very well, actually. It came together in those final weeks really nicely. Been a long time in the planning and in the creation, but the construction and the opening kind of went really nicely.
So describe the store to me.
It's small, I would say, 850 square feet. It's in a bit of an L shape with a nice window on the end of the L. So
it's bigger than my first apartment, so can't be that small.
Well, and a lot of people are telling me it's bigger than they were expecting, so I think I've got everyone prepared for it to be so tiny.
Yeah.
But no, it's a nice size, actually. We can get a good number of books in there, and giftware and toys and games, and it's gotten off to a nice start.
So it's kind of like a top sellers or best sellers or current.
Current, best, some description like that. Books are not entirely new releases, but certainly tilted towards new releases.
Did you guys have to hire a whole new staff?
No, we're just kind of expanding the staff we have at Grant Park. Some people will be working a couple of days in each store, get nice crossover so that everyone's familiar with both places, and it's just going to become an extension of the main store as opposed to a standalone separate entity.
Congratulations. I haven't been there yet. I'll definitely come by and visit.
You should check it out.
I will. I get by the Forks often, so I'll come up there now that you guys are open. So we're focusing on 5 books for March, What to Read. Now, this first one, what are we starting with?
We're starting with Colson Whitehead is the author. The book is called The Underground Railroad. Colson Whitehead's been on my radar for a number of years. It gets reviewed so well. We've always had a little trouble selling him. For some reason he doesn't cross over to us. But with this one, he really hit it. I read a lot of books, and so for a book to really get to those few that are really good takes something special. This is one of those books that I would describe as one of the best ones I've read.
When I look at the accolades for it, I mean, you don't even have to go beyond that, really. It says #1 New York Times bestseller, winner of the Pulitzer Prize, the National Book Award, the Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction, and longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. I mean, right there.
He's an incredible writer. Each book is different, so that's part of the sell of him. Just because you like one doesn't necessarily mean you go for another one. But this one is special. It's a novel about a young slave in Georgia, Cora by name, who a bit of an outcast with her fellow slaves, but makes the decision with another fellow slave to make an escape. And so they embark on the Underground Railroad. And in this novel, the Underground Railroad is not just a metaphor; it's an actual railroad underneath the earth. So it's got the rails and the tunnels and the conductors and the rail cars. So a bit of a flight of fantasy that way, but it's got a really interesting effect on the book because the escape or the journey is kind of very quickly told. It's really about the place of origin of the journey and the destination of the journey that becomes the focus, and just a reminder of the brutality of the world of the slaves and the legacy on future generations. It does a great job of interweaving time frames and characters and really builds that story. And not just the legacy on the victims, but the legacy of the slave owners. I mean, these people treated the slaves worse than animals. It was just awful. And you just wonder, what is the legacy on the ancestors of the white slave owners as much as the slaves themselves. It's really an affecting novel.
So that is Underground Railroad, Colson Whitehead. This next one, Bill Gates' new favorite book of all time.
Is it?
That's the slogan that caught my attention right there. I use that up on our website. My new favorite book of all time. I mean, to be honest, Bill Gates is whatever. Bill Gates, he's done amazing and stuff like that. But I'm just kind of intrigued. And what does a guy like Bill Gates, what does he look for in a book, right?
Yeah, well, I think this book is called Enlightenment now. It's by Steven Pinker. Steven Pinker's the last couple of books, he's a big thinker. And he's taken it upon himself to try to be a bit of a positive thinker in this great mess of our world. His last book was called Better Angels of Our Nature, and he argued in that over the course of history, and if you look at it in hundreds of years, the world is becoming safer, the world is becoming less violent, and even though we're constantly caught up in the current violence and the current headlines, that in fact, you and I, Michael, we're in more danger as children than our kids are today. So that's, reading violent crime statistics and all and kidnapping statistics and all those sorts of things, which isn't what comes to mind when you're reading the headlines.
Well, distorted by news, social media,
exactly.
et cetera. Yeah,
which is really anecdotal evidence, right? It's not the big picture. So Steven Pinker has come along, and this is his second book in that vein. And in this, he argues that our overall health, our overall prosperity, general safety, happiness, that's all increased over the last hundreds of years.
My gosh, you could have some crazy arguments.
I know, absolutely. It's really great for it gets conversation going. But there are certainly issues of fairness. Some people are better off than others. There's no arguing that. But overall, there isn't the widespread absolute poverty of barely getting enough to eat day after day after day, and this goes in China and the third world as well. That things are improving, and he's got graph after graph and stat after stat of proof on it. And he argues in this book that this prosperity stems from the Enlightenment, the 1700s, when the turn towards science and reason is what's been driving this progress, as he claims. And now he fears that science and reason need to be defended in an era where we're starting to slip back into questioning those things and going back to irrational explanations in his regard. So it's a conversation starter. I think there's all kinds of ways to ask questions, but a little bit of a different take on the world for sure.
And it's a doorstop too.
It is a doorstop.
It's a doorstop.
Sure. Yeah.
I always call those kind of things doors. It's a big, thick book, right?
Yeah, it is.
So the kind of thing that you're not going to read overnight. It's just sort of.
But it's going to fill your days with thoughts. It's going to make you. It's really going to provoke you to think.
And
which is great.
I give him credit for trying to look at the positive side of things. And I'm curious to read that book because I obviously, like everybody else, so influenced by what you see and
absolutely,
and what you hear and what you believe, right? I mean, that influences what we believe, and see his enlightened side of things. Whether or not I'll agree, I don't know. Again, but that's an intriguing read. And speaking of that, look at the next book. What is it called?
Look at that. It's like I set it up. This is a novel.
You did set it up.
This is a novel called Happiness. It's by an author named Aminata Forna. May not be on everyone's radar. She won the Commonwealth Prize, though, for her book Memory of Love. That's a few years ago. She followed that up with a book called Hired Man. This one it's almost like a mood piece. It's about two people in London, one who studies the fox population in London, and the other a psychiatrist from Guyana who's in town to give a speech. And they just happen upon each other, and a bit of a sub-story in there. One of the fellow's nephews has gone missing, and so they combine forces to try to find this nephew. But it's really about the world in London and disparate people, right from homeless right through to privileged folks coming together to find this boy. But there's also interweaves stories of nature, foxes and wolves, and just the real intermingling of a wide variety of lives, both human and otherwise. It's really it's a quiet read, and I quite liked it, actually.
You like those quiet reads. I noticed that.
The world's so noisy.
Every month you bring in a quiet read, something that sort of takes you away from it all.
I think it's one of the reasons I read, actually.
Okay, there you go. And yet, funny, I had a dream about foxes the other night. So maybe I have to read this one.
I think you should.
Up next, Separation by Katie Kitamura.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an unusual book for me to respond to. It's a story of...
It's not quiet?
Well, it's quiet.
It's quiet.
It's true. But it's a story of couple who have chosen that it's time for them to separate, and they keep it quiet and a private matter for the moment. But before they tell anyone, the fellow goes missing in off an island in Greece, and she, she's still his wife, so she gets called. She goes down there to try to look for him, and it's she really has to face her life and her relationship with him, and so on a plot level, it's not really, that's not how I would sell this book. It's not about what happens, although there is a plot there that's interesting, but it's this woman that's been removed from her life and almost adopts this parallel experience. She goes to Greece and on the off season, so there's not a lot of people around. She gets really kind of into a situation where she has to face her own thoughts. The distractions suddenly are gone, and it's a really interesting meditative look at what happens to her when she gets removed literally from her day-to-day life.
I like the cover of that one too.
Yeah, no,
nice
it's
cover.
an understated
Cover.
good book though.
And finally, we should mention before, in case we do forget, this next author is going to be at the bookstore March 21st for a reading.
Yeah,
signing, reading. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, the book is called Italian Teacher by Tom Rahman. So yes, he's going to be with us March 21st, 7:00. Tom Rahman wrote one of my all-time favorite books. It's called The Imperfectionists, a novel about a number of characters surrounding the decline of an international newspaper set in Rome, probably the International Herald Tribune as it existed back in the day, and a wonderful interweaving of short stories, really, and slowly builds up to a big story. And I've described those books before on the air that those are some of my favorites. When those come together, I just feel like, wow, that's amazing. So he really does it really well in The Imperfectionist. So I certainly recommend that. He followed that up with a book called Rise and Fall of Great Powers, and now this is his third, The Italian Teacher. This one's set in the art world, about a young boy, Pinch Bavinski. His dad is Bear Bavinski, a fictional great painter, and really overshadows his son, to say the least. So a little bit about art and the ego of the artist and so on. And the story is really about Pinch, wonderfully named Pinch.
Yeah.
Such a trying to overcome coming out of the shadow of this great figure in his life, and so very interesting for people who like art. Great settings in Rome and London and New York, and Rahman just has a lightness to his writing. It's nothing too heavy, although interesting settings and lots of things to think about, but really about great characters and just kind of interesting turns of phrase and. A little more entertaining than some of the books I bring on, maybe.
Not so quiet.
Yeah, not so quiet, not so deep and dark.
I don't want to give people this idea that you just like the quiet books. We'll move off of that subject for a moment. So Tom, he's a Canadian author as well.
He is originally born in Canada.
Yeah.
According to his biography, living in London. I suspect he spent some time in Rome because it seems to be one of the favorite settings that he uses in his books. But I very much recommend his books. He's a very reliable author, good reads.
I wonder if authors, when they're doing their bios, they create a fiction, or if it's a real thing.
Well, they can't be trusted.
Living in London,
right?
Been in Rome,
Exactly.
been there, right? If he creates fiction, maybe he can create his own fiction.
Absolutely,
right?
Don't trust them.
Don't trust him. Well, meet him if you want. March 21st, he's going to be at the store, and you can ask him, do you really live in London? Have you really been to Rome? It's called The Italian Teacher. So those are the 5 books that we featured for What to Read. You can find them all at McNally Robinson Bookstore. They've got 2 stores now. I don't know if they're all going to be at the one at Forks. Are they all at the Forks?
All the books? Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, we'll be featuring same features in both stores.
Okay.
That's be the same books we feature, same giftware we feature. So right out of our newsletter, that'll be, it'll look very familiar in that sense.
Okay. Thank you again, Chris, for coming in. A pleasure. Always look forward to the first Friday of every month. It's called What to Read. And again, it features all these books, all 5 books. And they've got a few more at McNally Robinson Booksellers, probably another, 50,000 titles or so you can check out there while you peruse, have something to eat, get some music. They've got it all. And again, it's called What to Read with Chris Hall from McNally Robinson Booksellers.